The Iran Memorandum of Understanding. Vice President Vance takes the lead in explaining what it is and what it isn't. Tulsi Gabbard takes one last shot at Dr. Fauci on her way out the door. And we end the week with a whole lot of winning. Good news to wrap up this week, Friday, June 19th. You're watching news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. My name's Chris Stigall. Be sure to keep up to date with all the latest headlines at heartlandernews.com. We begin with the deadly deception of Dr. Fauci, a name we haven't discussed a lot in a long while, and not many of us miss him, but many of us still remember the damage he wrought and the injustice of his tenure, and many people still clamoring for justice. As the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, walks out the door for her last day of service, her focus was on that very man, Dr. Fauci. Here's some of it.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19, and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when, under oath, he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth.
Okay, that's good.
Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community.
This is a big deal. Tulsi Gabbard's final act as Director of National Intelligence, delivering a bombshell. This release of never-before-seen documents and communications exposes, as you just heard, directly how Dr. Fauci directed millions in U.S. tax dollars, your money, to fund this Frankenstein monster experiment called gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The work is now widely viewed as the source of an unintentional lab leak that unleashed SARS-CoV-2 on the world. This evidence strongly suggests that Fauci helped fund the creation of that virus that was engineered in a lab. He then worked with politicized elements inside Intel to suppress the truth about its origins. And as she said, lied to Congress about it when asked in 2024 under oath. When asked about discussions with intelligence officials concerning viral research, Fauci falsely claimed he had no knowledge of it. Millions died worldwide from this virus. Billions more were essentially forced through mandates, job losses, travel restrictions, social coercion, forced into experimental shots, marketed as the only way out. Even then, the public was not fully informed about potential side effects of shots developed to combat this supposed pathogen that Fauci's own programs inevitably helped enable. Lives were shattered by illness, isolation, lost loved ones. Economies collapsed under lockdowns, all justified by narratives that he helped shape. This is not just incompetence, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of the worst scandals in human history. Families were destroyed. Businesses were ruined. Our trust in institutions obliterated. all while the architect of this catastrophe received a preemptive pardon from President Biden to shield him from accountability. And you'll remember that even James Comey himself said, if you accept a pardon, you're accepting guilt. Tulsi Gabbard's documents lay bare the cover-up. The American people deserve justice, not protection for those who may have funded and then lied about the very crisis that upended civilization as we know it. That pardon now from Joe Biden to Dr. Fauci, it only confirms how deep this rot really runs. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance this week took to the White House podium to explain the Iran Memorandum of Understanding. We'll start with number 300 here today, Aaron, as he swats away and defines what this is and what it isn't.
Some progressive criticisms of me personally saying, what experience does the Vice President of the United States have with hostile, high-stakes negotiations? And I would point those progressive critics to the fact that just 2 days ago, I spent over an hour on The View. So I actually have great experience in very hostile negotiations. And I've used that. I mean, look, Joy Behar is way tougher than the Iranians. And she and I are best friends now. So we're going to get to a good place here. We're going to get to a good place. We're already at a good place. It's just a question of whether we can really get the icing on the top of fundamentally transforming Iran's relationship with the world. I have seen.
Right. And he goes on to talk specifically about Israel. And this is interesting, too, that there's some critics in Israel. And by the way, there's some war hawks inside Washington, D.C., ironically, interestingly. It's a strange phenomenon, actually. I read somebody's commentary that said it's the war hawk that's actually helping the Trump administration look like they're bringing something to a close that they were originally attacked for starting. Unbelievably, here we are as the president tries to draw down this conflict and get this memorandum of understanding going. There are some, I guess, in the Israeli parliament that are criticizing Trump for not finishing the job. J.D. Vance minced no words on that criticism.
Completion. Now, I saw the Axios report, that Netanyahu is fuming. That's not reflective of the conversations that I've had with him, but maybe he's saying something to somebody else that he's not saying to me. What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal and in some ways very personally attacked the president of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And the second message I would give to some of those cabinet members, Bibi, to his credit, has not gone down this path, but to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the president of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in. Thank you all.
So Vice President Vance dropping some truth hammers as he heads out the door, taking the White House podium. Meanwhile, gas prices have fallen below $4 this week for the first time since March, bringing consumers some relief, writes NBC News, after more than 3 months of elevated prices as a result of the Iran war. Even Harry Enton, the vaudevillian over at CNN, had to admit his surprise. Things don't suck as much as they were really hoping they would suck. Number 304 here. Here's the vaudevillian having to admit things are improving. Damn it.
Gas prices are now below $4 a gallon here. What are the prediction markets saying they will be in the future?
Yeah, if he's not going to be the next Joe Biden, this is the helpful sign for him, right? Chance gas prices this year rise above $5 a gallon. You know, you go back about a month ago, it was a 74% chance according to the cash prediction markets. Now it's just a 22% chance. This is the type of stuff that Donald Trump needs to avoid being a new Joe Biden.
Gas prices.
This is the kind of stuff that needs to happen for Donald Trump to not be the next Joe Biden. I think, Harry, it might be a couple more differences just besides the gas prices, but okay, fine. Let's get to some good news this week because there was plenty, as a matter of fact. The United States is moving toward troop reductions in Europe. Pete Hegseth scolding NATO allies. I love this. Out of Brussels from the Washington Post, the Pentagon will conduct a 6-month review of troop levels in Europe as they seek to scale back their military footprint and shift more of the United States' role at NATO to European allies, said Pete Hegseth yesterday. The U.S. plans and questions about them are at the center of talks at NATO headquarters as the Trump administration seeks to curtail the forces and weapons that the United States has dedicated to protecting the continent for decades. Good. Great. Because where the hell have any of these people been during the conflict with Iran? Nowhere to be found. Along with reviewing its troop posture, the U.S. will cut the number of fighter jets, resonance drones, and warships that it would activate for Europe in case of war. The U.S. move is set to pull back about 1/3 of fighter jets and some other assets that European nations would struggle to backfill, such as strategic bombers, the diplomat said. NATO officials working out which countries can fill some of the gaps and how fast. European capitals have pledged to take more responsibility at NATO. In Eastern Europe, especially, leaders can still call the Western alliance a crucial bulwark against Russia. Even with the plans for reductions, the U.S. has tens of thousands of troops and nuclear warheads stationed across Europe and remains deeply enmeshed in NATO command and control. Well, maybe, but this is a surefire signal. And by the way, to all of the non-interventionists out there, I hope you're happy, and I hope President Trump gets the credit that he is due for scaling back weapons of war, bringing home our men and women stationed around the world, bringing home our taxpayer-funded assets. If Europe doesn't want to be helpful with our endeavors in the Middle East, specific to Iran, for instance, then let them deal with it themselves. I mean, we've seen what's gone on in London. We've seen what's going on in Western Europe. In my view, they're being conquered by Islamists as we speak. Yet they want to continue to sit on their hands and sit on the sidelines while we try to tackle the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they do nothing to lift a finger. They're slowly being conquered in the West. This is not a good time if I'm a European to see the United States peeling back on munitions and personnel. But c'est la vie, Europe. If that's the way you want to play it, fine. I'm all for it myself. President Trump is yanking South Africa's AIDS funding after government failed to protect white farmers. I don't know if you saw this. The Trump administration has noticed the way South Africa has not protected white South Africans, specifically from violence and displacement. This is becoming a real thing. It's probably not something you've heard about, but the racism directed toward white Africans, outright theft of their farmland, has become a huge human rights issue in Africa. And as such, the president and president's cabinet at state told Africa that its government failed to do the following 6 things: provide exemptions or alternatives for U.S. companies on race-based mandates, have senior government officials unequivocally condemn all race-based incitements, prevent the implementation of measures that would allow expropriation with fair compensation, and so on. Anyway, South Africa is a middle-income country and is more than capable of supporting its own health programs, said a State Department spokesperson. Trump holds up a printed article from the American Thinker accusing the South African president of state-sanctioned violence against white farmers in South Africa back in May of 2025. I recall that. This is an important issue. Trump is not backing off of that. So good. Here again, more justice being served on the international stage. Pulling back from an incompetent Europe that doesn't want to be helpful. Pulling back from a racist South Africa being hostile to whites. I love this. This is stuff you're not going to hear. This is not stuff that Harry Enton is going to poll. But the world is sitting up and taking notice. President Trump's not playing. He is serving justice, and he's dispensing it fast. Meanwhile, the education department back here at home, the department said borrowers who are already enrolled in auto repayment don't need to take any further action, but they will automatically see their interest rates lowered by a percentage point beginning July 1. So if you have student loans out there through the Department of Ed, They will reduce the student loan interest rates by 1% starting July 1 for borrowers who are enrolled in automatic repayments. So a little relief there for those of you who hold some student loan debt. Speaking of colleges, here's more wins this week. Some colleges are pulling back from Pride Month amid pressure from the Trump administration. What does this mean exactly? Well, dozens of colleges, and this is not the Bette, we started the week with Bette Midler singing. That's not what this is, just to be clear. Dozens of colleges have quietly pulled back from Pride Month this year under pressure from the Trump administration to enforce institutional neutrality policies. The trade publication Insider Higher Ed reported that the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, UNC Greensboro, Lamar University in Texas recently deleted their LGBTQ social media posts. Other top schools pulled down pride flags from public spaces, including the University of Chicago and Boston University. Do you see the power of the taxpayer funding that goes flowing into these places, and when it's threatened, what they're willing to do and not do? Are you following this? Because that's what it is. The University of North Texas dropped its sponsorship of the Denton Pride Festival. And the story goes on to say the shift is having clear ramifications across the country where we're seeing rainbow crosswalks painted over and pride-themed displays erased. The Education Department redesignated June as Title IX month for the second year in a row, pushing colleges to publicly repudiate the Biden administration's support for male-born transgender athletes competing in women's sports. The month honors a 1972 federal law requiring equal opportunities for male and female athletes. I think this is brilliant. The Trump administration using the Education Department to force a celebration of Title IX, fair treatment of women in competitive sports, instead of using it as a month to promote men pretending to be women and unfairly competing against women. The Education Department has investigated dozens of school districts and colleges that reinterpreted the Title IX law to protect self-identified gender identity rather than biological sex. I love this. And furthermore, they know that if they get out over their skis at these universities promoting this dreck, they could lose federal funding. And that terrifies them more than anything, because guess what? People are not going to college at the rate they used to. Colleges are dropping in attendance. Their money is drying up. They can ill afford the federal government, your tax dollars, taking away more because they get crossways on this Title IX stuff or they start playing politics. So it is just, it's remarkable. And President Trump here again, he has the leverage. He understands these colleges, they can't play, they can't afford to play. I mean, unless you are one of these very, very, very well funded, these massive endowment schools, these Ivy League schools that have gazillions of constant free flow of endowment dollars. These public institutions, they can't stand, frankly. They've raised their tuitions to a place that's already unaffordable for most Americans. People are really beginning to realize taking on copious amounts of student debt does not pay. So the Ed Department, a 1-2 punch here, lowering the interest rate for those who have student loans and they're on a repayment program, and at the same time telling colleges, you keep pushing this stuff, we're going to pull their taxpayer funding. I love it. Great stuff from the Ed Department. On a related note, just a cultural note while we're at it, there's a minor league baseball team in Pennsylvania who has canceled their Pride Night game. And why? And by the way, I just want to be clear. This is not about me telling you, I don't think you should be allowed to have your Pride celebration or whatever if you want. That's fine. Go for it. But just understand, not everybody supports it, and you're going to get pushback. And the great pushback is underway, and it's a beautiful thing to see. I think I told you on this show that Catherine Hanaway, the Attorney General of Missouri, has already warned Major League Baseball that if there's any kind of retribution or punishment of Major League Baseball players who are playing in Missouri for refusing to wear the Pride Night garb or inscripting, biblical scripture on their hats or uniforms or whatever, if there's any kind of retribution from Major League Baseball to players for that while playing in Missouri, Catherine Hanaway said to Major League Baseball, we'll see you in court. That's my AG. I love that. The push is on. A lot of players are saying, we're not comfortable with this. Yeah, athletes are, by and large, and this is something a lot of people don't know or talk about much, but most athletes, particularly baseball players, they're conservatives. They're often Christian conservatives, and it's never really much been discussed. but it's true. And now the York Revolution, if you don't know them, again, a minor league baseball team in Pennsylvania, stated that after Thursday's game, several players refused to wear special rainbow-themed uniforms. York Revolution said that tickets to the game may be exchanged for any remaining 2026 season games, so they canceled the game altogether. York Revolution announced the forfeiture in a statement saying this decision was not reached lightly. Unfortunately, several of our players have refused to wear the scheduled Pride Night jersey, and the club decided that hosting the event is more important than forcing players to wear jerseys that they are not comfortable with and playing the game. As a result, and out of respect for the Pride community and the York community as a whole, the York Revolution has decided to cancel the game. Yes, out of respect for Pride, we've decided to cancel the game. No, it turns out you can't play a game without players, and the players don't want to wear the stupid uniforms. But isn't it amazing? The front office, these guys that don't, they make all their money. The show is on the field. The show is the players. The only thing that matters is the players. If you don't have players, you don't have a game, you don't have an event. So they had to cancel the event. But yet they still pretended in the front office of the York Revolution that this was about Pride. We canceled it to celebrate Pride. I mean, that's quite a framing. Way to spin it. You canceled the event to celebrate Pride, to celebrate Pride. You follow? It's such a joke. It's such a joke. And I'm glad to see this. This is a long time coming. Again, it has nothing to do with being anti-gay or hostile to people who are gay or whatever. Have your parade, have your party. But you cannot force people who have objection to this sort of thing, particularly people who object to it publicly, this idea of pride and being forced to wear rainbow stuff. You know, imagine going to your office and your boss greets you at the door and said, here's your obligatory Pride Month rainbow pin or sticker or jersey or whatever. I need you to wear this around the office this month. I think a lot of us who are believers would have a decision to make about whether we could continue to work there or not, or refuse to show up. And I think we'd have, by the way, I think we'd have a case in court if any of our bosses came along and said, hey, put this jersey on to celebrate LGBTQ plus politics this month. I think you could get yourself an attorney and find yourself in a court of law successful if your employer forced you to do that. And yet that's exactly what Major League Baseball's been trying to do to their players and also some minor league teams. And now the players are pushing back and saying, no, go ahead and try to have a game without us playing. The York Revolution just effed around and found out. This is what has to happen. This is what everybody of conscience, this is what everybody who is a conservative, particularly on cultural issues, this is what we must do. Band together, because there are more of us than there are of them, and say, no, it's not about being anti-you, but it is about being pro-us. It is about being pro-Christian. It is about being pro-biblical principles. And we're not backing away from them to be polite. We're going to stand firm on them. So you're going to, if we must be forced to tolerate and live with the LGBTQ community, then they must also be forced to tolerate and live with us. And so at a minimum, at a bare minimum, culturally in public places, it's a draw. We're not going to be waving. Okay, you say no scripture. Okay, not great about it. That's an individual's decision whether they're comfortable with being told no scripture. But there damn well better be no pride flags then. That's the trade-off. Then it's going to be even Steven. It's not going to be pride stuff shoved down our throats and no scripture, no God, no Christianity. That's not going to, that doesn't wash. And in a culture that is starting to pick up steam for believers, very, very good news. I'm elated by it. It put me in a great frame of mind when I read that story this morning. Also a federal appeals court ruled yesterday that the Department of the Interior can, in fact, remove and replace a slavery exhibit at the site of the United States' first executive residence in Philadelphia. I know a little something about this, having lived in Philadelphia for a time. The President's House is what it's called. It's on Independence Mall. It is just across the street from the Independence Visitors Center. It is the first residence that George Washington, as the chief executive, stayed in, just not even a football field, I don't think, away from Independence Hall. Literally, he would walk out the door of Independence Hall and walk down to this small house that was very close by. They the city of Philadelphia and the Parks Service reconstructed sort of a framework of the president's house there on Independence Mall. If you haven't been, it's worth going. But when they opened this big display, I think it was around 2010, 2009, 2010. Surprise, surprise. They had dug up. It's an interesting thing because they dug up sort of the underground of it too, where, you know, the slave quarters and the kitchen and the whole thing, sort of the basement, and you can see it, what they've exhumed through sort of a glass floor, a plexiglass floor. So it's interesting. It's cool. It's where George Washington stayed and all that. But what Obama's Interior Department did when they opened it was make it a tribute to slavery. Like it's if you go and you saw it before what Trump did here, you would think that it was just an homage to slaves. You barely even really understood that it was George Washington's first residence as president of the United States. And that was Trump's objection to it. And so he sent the Interior Department to Independence Mall to take down this stuff and replace it with more historically accurate, and by the way, text that was favorable to George Washington and the work that was done on Independence Mall, which is not a bad thing. And can you do both? Again, this is just like the pride thing. You don't have to hate people who are gay. You don't have to say you're not allowed to recognize that you're gay or have your pride celebrations or whatever, but you don't get to erase Christianity. You don't get to silence people of faith. Similarly, is slavery something important that we acknowledge in the country? Of course it is. Is it a blot on the American story? Of course it is. Was it erased from the president's house exhibit? No, not at all. And this three-judge panel said as much. A three-person panel ruled that a lower court didn't have the authority to block the president's order because Philadelphia, the city, does not own the president's house or the Independence Historical Park. And one judge particularly went on to say the new signs and displays that have been mounted on this by the Trump administration give full historical context. Now, I have not been back to see this display since the Trump administration and the Interior Department replaced these things, but the judge said it this way: the new display highlights the momentous events that took place in the president's house and the other sites at Independence National Historical Park. They acknowledge the evil of slavery, including its injustices and hypocrisies, and by telling the story of 9 slaves that Washington kept in the president's house, remind us of their essential humanity. So it did not, in fact, erase the premise that George Washington held slaves there. It did not erase the negative storyline that slavery was an ugly stain on American history, and it's something that they acknowledge, they still acknowledge. They just reframed it so as to not make it the only focus. It was not simply a monument to slavery. You have to tell the whole story. That's all. It's not about excluding a part of the story. It's about not excluding the George Washington part of the story and the founding of the country and the significance of his role there. And there was no evidence. If you'd been to see that previous to the Trump administration, you'd be forgiven if you thought it was just a slavery tribute and nothing more. So those are some wins on the cultural front. Speaking of our history and American history, as we approach the 250th anniversary of the country, back to the vaudevillian, they roll out there at CNN with a new poll on how much Democrats just can't stand this country, really. He's stunned. I don't know why. I mean, if you listen to them talk, it's pretty clear why. Give me number 303 here, and here is the vaudevillian, stunned at the results that Democrats don't like the country much.
Patriotic are Americans feeling this morning? With us now, CNN chief data analyst.
We will
Harriet.
always remember Lexington and Concord, people. We will always remember it here on CNC.
Patriots Day versus the 4th. We know which one is more important, but the meaning of the 4th, when we ask voters about this, what do most of them say at this point?
This, to me, is one of the most stunning divides that we have seen. You know, we're talking about polarization in politics. It even comes down to what you believe July 4th actually is. Like, what does July 4th mean to you? Celebrate America, friends and family time. Among Republicans, what do you see? You see the clear majority say it's a time to celebrate America, 65%. Among Democrats, however, the plurality disagree. Look at that. What do you see? Friends and family time at 42%. versus just 24% who say that what it means most to them is to celebrate America. So even on the basic question of what July 4th means to you, we have Republicans on one end saying celebrate America, more of them say that, and Democrats on the other end saying that it means more to them to have time with friends and family.
What do they say about the flag?
Yeah, okay, so what do they say about the flag? Even on the basic level of flag, look at this. Look at how we have an increasing polarization on this issue. We'll display the flag on July 4th, the American flag. Back in July of 2001, look at this. You had 68% of Republicans, 65% of Democrats saying that they would, in fact, display the flag on July 4th. You come over to this side of the screen, Republicans basically are where they were 25 years ago, right? 64%. But look at that Democratic percentage, absolutely plummeting. Just 27% of Democrats say they will, in fact, display the flag on July 4th. Democrats and Republicans in different camps, even on the simple question of displaying the flag on July 4th, a polarization, a split that simply put did not exist a generation ago.
What about the sloganeering about proud to be an American?
Okay, what about this idea? Are you proud to be an American? Extremely or very proud to be an American? Again, look at this divide, a growing divide on this question. Back in January of 2001, 90% of Republicans, 85% of Democrats. This was after a very contentious 2000 election, keep in mind, right, with George W. Bush coming into the White House. You come over to this side of the screen in 2026, look at this. Again, the Democratic percentage absolutely plummets to just 29% of Democrats say they're extremely or very proud to be an American. That Republican percentage, the exact same, 90 and 90. The Democratic percentage, what is that? That's basically a third of the level that it was just 25 years ago.
I think you're right to point out this was a time when Democrats might have been feeling badly about the course of the country. Still, 85% said they were proud to be American. Something's changed.
Something has absolutely changed, despite the fact a contentious time then, a contentious time now, and yet Democrats, that extremely very pride number has absolutely plummeted.
Yeah, well, I don't know the veracity of those numbers. I haven't seen their sampling, but it's pretty clear. And we saw it earlier in the week. You know, I played for you the De Niro clip. We saw it in Joy Behar. It's all about who's president for Democrats. That's all. For people who love the country, despite the presidency, they always love the country. I mean, as this country approaches its 250th birthday, I think most of us are filled with heartfelt patriotism and love of country. I mean, this country has created more wealth and lifted more people out of poverty and produced more world-changing inventions, delivered more freedom than any nation in human history. It still remains the freest, most prosperous, and most innovative society that was ever created on this planet. And yet, you see stories like these polls from Harry Enton over there at CNN. Did you see yesterday the grand opening of his stupid, ugly, lavish presidential center, Barack Hussein Obama? So he chooses the 250th anniversary of this big, ugly, trash can-looking presidential museum and library or whatever. He chose this moment to declare that the founders fell short. In fact, the direct quote was, fell terribly short of the Declaration's promise. He scolded them for leaving slavery intact and restricting voting to white men with property. I mean, this was Barack Obama yesterday. Here's just some of it. This is the former president of the United States on its 250th anniversary. This is some of the footage from that event. Valerie Jarrett, his seven-figure CEO of this thing that is wildly over budget and overdue and well behind schedule and opening. Here we finally are, number 305. Take a listen.
We'd also like to take a moment to recognize the original inhabitants of the land upon which we are gathered today. We honor the Anishinaabe, the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations.
In Chicago. Okay, fine. And then, of course, Mrs. Obama. What day would be complete without Mrs. Obama and her 2 cents?
It's proving what it truly means to be a dreamer. These folks aren't Americans too. They are America. They are the beating heart of this country. They are us and we are them. And to ignore this simple truth, to refuse to respect the contributions and experiences of people who aren't exactly like us, y'all puts us all at risk. Failing to see the humanity in all people puts us all on a slippery slope. Immigrants prove
anger. The 250th anniversary of the country, and Harry Enton over at CNN and John Berman there wonder aloud, gosh, I wonder what's happened to Democrats. Something's really changed. These people changed. These people changed it all. These people constantly tell their voters that the country is rotten and no good, and if they're not running it, nothing's worth a damn. So don't fly your flag and don't celebrate the country, and our best days are behind us and all of that. And it's just a perpetual stream of those news stories. This from the Hill. Fewer in a new poll say anyone can achieve the American dream. It's depressing. Now, again, this is a sample size of 6,300 adults. So this is just random people they pulled off the street, 6,300 people. And the percentage here is 48%, which is still pretty high, I guess. It's about a 50-50 split. So about half the adults asked in this survey, can anyone achieve the American dream? Half say yes, half say no. It's sad that there are half in this country that think anyone is not able to achieve the American dream. But it's thanks to this kind of anger, this perpetual petulance. Barack Hussein Obama, of course, finally got to speak at his own long overdue, well over budget museum and library. And here he is, number 307.
A belief in the peaceful transfer of power after the people have spoken in fair and free elections, recognizing that in a large, complicated society like ours, no group or faction gets its way 100% of the time. And a belief that qualities of character, honesty, integrity, kindness, compassion, sense of duty, institution.
Yeah, look, this is one of the angriest, most divisive men that's ever occupied the White House. He and his administration have done more to divide and destroy goodwill amongst Americans than anything we've ever seen in history. They are as sinister, frankly. And I mean, look, Barack Obama is the guy that famously told the automobile industry when he bailed them out. Remember when they were about to collapse, the whole cash for clunkers era, and the government funded a big bailout of the big three automakers in Detroit. And they came to Obama and they finally said, hey, we don't want any more loans. And part of the conditions were the government threw money at GM and Chrysler. Ford did not take it, which to Ford's credit, they said no. But Obama fed money into Chrysler and GM, and they kept pumping money into Chrysler and GM. And Obama said, okay, and here's the trade-off. We're going to give you taxpayer money, but in exchange, we get to put Obama people on your board to help control your operations. That's fascism. Back to stupid Bette Midler singing, you fascists. That's true fascism. The government injecting taxpayer funds into a private entity and then putting people on its board to control that entity without actually being fully in control. That is textbook fascism. Just so we're clear, the Obama administration ushered that in. And it was Obama who said to them, as quoted in a Politico story that I'll never forget, when they said, you know what, Mr. President, we're done. I think we're solid now. We don't need any more funds. So if we could end this, that would be great. And he said, oh, no. You're going to keep taking the money until I tell you you're done taking the money. Or the only thing standing between me and the pitchfork, or the only thing standing between you and the pitchforks is me. That's a quote. He told auto executives in a meeting at the White House, you had better continue to behave and do what I tell you and take this money and don't try to back out of the deal or I'll turn the mob on you. Meaning he knew the power that he had to basically make the American public hate auto executives or anybody else that he wanted. And he does. He always has. He has that golden tongue. He delivers these magnificent speeches, and people become hypnotized by his pretty speeches, and he can get the mob to turn on people with that silver tongue in a minute. He knows it. It is his gift. It's his superpower. It's sinister, but it's true. The Washington Times, fantastic hosts are wowing World Cup travelers, dispelling anti-U.S. buzz that preceded the tournament. Oh, so apparently we're not so damned rotten after all. Sweltering temperatures, rampant crime, and unfriendly locals. That was the soccer fan. That was what the soccer fans who flocked to the World Cup were told to expect. But instead, international visitors tell the Washington Times they've fallen in love with historic sites and gas stations, modern shops, restaurants, and bars. And friendly Americans. Well, I'll be damned. The country's not rotten to the core. Did you know that? America and the world needed this. The world has been a pretty dark place for 10 years, said one. Just being in a situation where different fan groups, communities coming together just to have fun and learn about each other and engage, it's been really special. Or maybe that's always what America has been. Maybe that's always been the story. That's what's so infuriating about what we heard Barack Obama and Mrs. Obama and the others at this stupid opening yesterday say. This incomplete history that they talk about, this revisionist history that our founding was only about slavery, it reveals far more about the speaker than about the founders he was criticizing. You know, many of the founders personally opposed slavery, as a matter of fact, and there were real debates about ending it at our founding. They made painful compromises, though, to forge one nation out of 13 very different colonies. The work was different then. The opposition was different then. So they did the best they could to create a framework that was later strengthened by the Bill of Rights. And that allowed every generation after that to expand liberty. And we did. Hundreds of thousands of Americans later died in battle to end slavery, as a matter of fact. What's far more telling, though, is who delivered this critique to begin with. Barack Obama, a man who was reelected by this country in 2012, a man of color, not a victim of any kind. He was given every opportunity this nation offers. He was a man showered with unimaginable wealth, massive book advances, Netflix deals. Despite not being a particularly accomplished writer, my friend Jack Cashel wrote an entire book on that, Dreams from My Father. You should read it. He was not particularly successful as a producer either. He really has no record of accomplishment, but he was a man treated with extraordinary respect anyway, and generosity by the very nation he continues to indict. And yet, instead of gratitude, all we see out of him and his wife are bitterness. Behind the practiced calm, there's this deep anger and resentment. His words on the eve of our nation's milestone birthday weren't really about 1776 at all. They exposed an extraordinarily ungrateful guy. Someone given so much and yet with so little positivity or appreciation for the opportunities America has provided him. This event yesterday, the Obamas, this speech, it tells us a lot less about the founding fathers. It tells us a whole lot more about the character of the Obamas themselves. They're bitter. They're divisive. They seem incapable of genuine thanks for what this country made possible in their own lives. And that's the real disappointment, frankly. At a time when we should all be reflecting on how far we've come, one of our former presidents still chooses to tear down the very foundation that made his own extraordinary success possible. Yes, just like at the president's house in Philadelphia, we can acknowledge flaws in our past without forgetting the miracle of what America has achieved and continues to achieve. True leadership would actually remind us of that. Instead, what do we get? Another lecture laced with resentment. I don't know about you, but I've had enough of it. I'm celebrating America's 250th birthday, and I'm going to fly my flag on my front porch happily. In fact, I've never been prouder to be an American than I am right now. I hope you feel the same. And that'll do it today from America's Heartland. Be sure to keep us, I hope, in check when you follow along on YouTube. Maybe give us a comment. Let us know what you're thinking about the show. Keep up to date, of course, on all the latest news all week long, every single day, from honest, straightforward, both commentators and journalists. Heartlandernews.com is where you can find that. Heartlandernews.com. Stay in touch with us. Hope you'll give us a like, a follow, a listen, some comments, and we'll see you right here next week. Glad to have you along on Heartlander News.